What scientific breakthrough are we closer to than most people realize? Treating depression with neuromodulation therapy instead of medications. Stanford is heavily involved in clinical trials using their SAINT treatment. It essentially uses transcranial magnetic stimulation in a similar way to DBS, but is less invasive and better tolerated. I'm trying to get into one of their clinical trials. I'm looking forward to a day when I don't need medication to stop me from wanting to die. I'm on antidepressant number 7 or 8 at this point, and finding one that works, doesn't make me manic, doesn't ruin my libido, and doesn't make me gain weight is impossible. Currently taking vilazodone, which isn't too bad, but probably not as efficacious as it should be. I will say that after years of missing Frisson, I'm finally back to getting those goosebumps whenever I listen to music that hits just so. My doc thought this was unusual but super cool. My doc is also very supportive of me pursuing that clinical trial. The coolest part is that if you're in the placebo group, they will give you the real therapy after the trial is over. Story 2. The first cancer cure. There will never be a single cure, but we will probably see the first successful end-all cure for a few different types of cancer within the next 20 years, 100%. It's so close. We are right there. The leading push in mRNA vaccines makes me happy. The idea is each vaccine will be tailored specifically to each patient. At the base level, all they're doing is taking out your cells that already deal with cancer, T cells, and essentially teaching them to recognize a specific protein in your specific cancer, then giving them back to you, so your own body can deal with it. Your T cells deal with cancer all the time. I believe the estimate was every 5 minutes or so your body deals with a cancer cell. It's when these cancer cells hijack the immune system and hide themselves from the T cells when it becomes the cancer that we know. The cancer that grows and consumes. So we're basically trying to just point to where the cancer is, giving the T cells a briefing first on how to recognize and attack the enemy, because they were tricked into thinking the cancer was normal cells. We send them back in with their new training and they get to work. I think anyway. Story 3. Brain chips will one day be able to enable us to live to age 150 by modulating our DNA dialing gene expression up or down by altering RNA and chemicals and hormones in our body. If coupled with a vitamin implant, we could always operate optimally. It'll eradicate mental illness, a variety of diseases, and cancer. We could also alter our conscious state, increase productivity, and focus while at work, as well as alter chemistry to relax us at home. The chip will be able to link to the internet one day, accessing information and images using our internal monologue to convey. Communicating telepathically would not really be used, as it'll be uncomfortable having an involuntary voice in your head. But near future, cure for HIV. It enters cells using CCR5 delta 32 receptor, and a drug can be developed via RNA to turn off CCR5 delta 32, curing HIV in your body. They can use CRISPR for this, but that's permanent removal. People without this gene like me are immune to HIV. And if bone marrow transplanted to people with HIV, it cures it. There's been documented cases. There will be a cure for HIV within a decade. They'll already be working on it as they're developing RNA drugs for other diseases like Alzheimer's. Why is there no news on RNA HIV research? Well, it's likely secret. I'm a little confused why things like this would be secret, you know what I mean? Like, I see no benefit to it being under wraps. The only thing I could think of is some profiteering motive, like they want to keep it for themselves so they can charge a bunch for it, which is just gross when it comes to medicine, but I know it happens. But I don't know if I 100% buy OP's explanation of it's likely secret. Story 4. A manufactured, artificially intelligent, realistic, functional, and programmable romantic partner. A pleasure bot, if you will. For both men and women. They won't really love you, or will they? Programmed emotions and responses aren't real emotions and responses, or are they? Etc., etc. It's going to cause massive upheaval, arguments, and qualia and consciousness. Like Morpheus asking, what is real? I think it's going to be great for humanity. Those who truly want to be with another organic being will seek each other out, and those men who can never seem to find the right person that will treat them right, the way they want and need to be treated, will have options. Will those options be good enough, people wonder? Real or imaginary, the effects are the same. There's a point at which, even if you care about reality, your brain doesn't. Imagine getting a robot boyfriend or girlfriend just to try it, or tide you over until you meet Mr. or Mrs. Right. It's like therapy. You may not think it's working or doing anything, but it is. And before long, you're happy, healthy, not lonely. Maybe you find a real person and maybe you don't. But you're better than you were before, and that's the point. We want to be better. We can choose to be better. We are choosing to be. And those bots are going to help us get there. And something that good and useful for humanity that answers or attempts to answer that deep, longing need in our soul for love and companionship, it won't stay on the drawing board for long. It's coming, so get ready. It will be glorious. Maybe I'm just jaded, but if these were to exist, I do not think they would be used for good purposes. There have been many examples showing that people don't treat inanimate things that well. Because if not seen as real, these people tend to rationalize, abusing them in ways. And sure, they're not technically hurting anyone, but that doesn't sound like it would have the positive effects OP is talking about. And I'm not saying a lot of people would do this, or the majority. I don't know how many people would. But it has been shown that people do not treat things they don't view as other people that well. Story 5. Depends on what you mean by close. Physicists and astrophysicists have made incredible leaps in the last 20 years, detecting exoplanets to the point where we can analyze the contents of their atmosphere for presence of biological or technological activity. They're also looking farther back in time towards the beginning of the universe, using infrared and even gravity waves. Where this gets really exciting is that with each refinement of this technology, they're getting closer to solving the discrepancies in physics, such as we still don't know how some elements are made. The smaller ones, like everything lighter than iron, gets made in stars through fusion processes. Heavier ones, like gold, get made in supernovas. But there are ones that are too prevalent in the universe than they should be given the amount of energy it takes to create such heavy elements. Cesium, for instance. Point being, they have done 90% of the work towards a final, unified theory. Some are saying that the right application of AI will get us the rest of the way there. But I can tell you that there have been breakthroughs in PV solar and energy storage that will be driving down the cost of that tech and making it more efficient. In the near future, there will be just solar panels everywhere and no power plants. The main barriers to that being trade wars between China and the US, of course. Story 6. Quantum advantage/supremacy. It's long been thought that we were decades away from achieving that, if ever. We are likely still some years, but not decades away. IonQ, for instance, is developing quantum computers using trapped ions, which allows for making them at room temperature rather than absolute zero needed with superconducting. I don't typically make predictions, but I suspect the quantum computing will come around the same time as the achievement of artificial generative intelligence, depending on how that's defined. Maybe 5 to 8 year time frame. I don't think most people will begin to understand the impact and promise of quantum computing, however, until maybe 10 years from now. Story 7. Curing depression. It's already available and people just don't know about it. It's super expensive and sounds scary. It's called TMS. Transcranial magnetic stimulation. I'm currently on my second week of a 6-week treatment. Monday to Friday for 6 weeks, I sit in a chair and have a machine with a magnetic coil sitting over my skull, specifically targeting the dorsolateral frontal cortex. A changing magnetic field is used to induce an electric current targeting and stimulating this part of the brain. Electromagnetism sounds like shock therapy, but it's not. It's super non-invasive. I sit in this chair for 3 minutes, and there's an electrical pulse, 4 seconds on, 8 seconds off in rotation. It feels like Pikachu is nibbling on my skull. My eye and jaw slightly twitch as the pulse flows. This stimulation to the dorsal lateral frontal cortex helps the brain produce its own dopamine, serotonin, and epinephrine over time, basically curing depression. And there's a coil that targets a different part of the brain to cure OCD if needed. It's safer than depression medications like Wellbutrin or Zoloft, and it has a high success rate. The best part for me is that back in September in California, TMS was approved by Medi-Cal, so I'm receiving this treatment completely on the insurance's dime. My psych says she has trouble convincing patients to take the treatment for free, all because it sounds scary. Movies and TV have a big role in this sphere. People hear brain and electricity and think of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or something. No, Opie, it sounds freaky, even with you explaining it. Freaky in the way that I just don't understand it, though. Not freaky as in if that makes sense. Story 8. Can't believe I haven't seen it yet. Cell reprogramming via iPSC. And it's already here for some cell types. A very cool Japanese dude got the 2012 Nobel Prize of Medicine for this. He and his team were able to deprogram a specialized cell and reprogram it into a different specialized cell. For instance, a fat cell into a cartilage cell. This will simply be one of the last big medical advances we make. Messed up your lungs? No bother. Get some of your cells, water, and lots of love, and you've got a new pair. No compatibility issues, no rejection or meds. Potentially inexpensive. Mind you, there are challenges and safety concerns yet, as you need to tinker with the cell's DNA in order to do it, which is tricky, and we're very, very far away from functional full organs, but the even more bonkers stuff is already happening. They've tried injecting healthy stem cells in the area of damaged tissue, cartilage if I recall correctly, and somehow the pre-existing cells were able to communicate with the new stem cells, repairing that tissue. I can't put enough emphasis on how absolutely stupid this is, how potentially we could repair parts of our bodies that we can't now dream of repairing. And for potentially peanuts. The possibilities are near limitless if we manage to make them perfectly safe, and we get the engineering part right. Story 9. Zero emissions internal combustion engines. We currently have fuel alternatives, such as e-fuel, that output net zero carbon dioxide emissions. With gasoline, the carbon dioxide comes from the petroleum pulled from the ground. With e-fuel, the CO2 used to make the fuel comes from the atmosphere, so what comes out the tailpipe is water vapor, and the same mass of CO2 used to produce the fuel. Hence, net zero. Of course, the electricity must come from a renewable source, but one plant can be powered by a couple of wind turbines. The major benefit of this is that we wouldn't have to spend trillions updating our power grid, and you could use this stuff on older cars. Formula One will be running it starting in 2026, and to prove it works, they drove a car from '92 running on e-fuel. The problem with EVs is they, for the most part, rely on coal-powered electricity, and I won't even get into how polluting and unsustainable lithium mining is. While everyone else is wrongly investing in EV tech, Toyota and Porsche are investing big money into e-fuels. GM just announced that they're developing a new generation of small block V8s, possibly implying that they see the potential in e-fuel as well. Story 10. Humans 2.0. It will take some in vitro gene splicing of zygotes for each new child at conception, but then that child and other such children will genetically have and be able to pass on the traits of longer and longer lasting telomeres and such. Then that child can expect to age much slower, living much longer than humans do now, perhaps with a life expectancy of 160 to 200 years. At 80 to 90 years old, they will look and function as if they're 35 to 40. Since they have the genetics, they will be able to pass on the same traits to their offspring naturally. Unless, of course, they mate with one of the religious nuts who refuse to participate in the zygotic in vitro gene splicing update for their children, and then if their children do not inherit enough of the newly updated traits from their other parent, or if the other parent was equally as religiously convicted, they will experience the joy of aging twice as fast as everybody else, and perhaps passing away after becoming feeble and frail in what will then be thought of as being very early middle-age years, like around 80 or 90 or something. Perhaps at first, in many places, the religiously convicted and such will manage to pass laws against such procedures, but then the rich, including the religiously convicted rich, will just fly off somewhere else. They get the update for each of their newly planned children with a procedure and an in vitro assisted conception, then implantation, for what will then proceed as a natural pregnancy for the remainder. It will soon enough start to become apparent that most of the children of the rich age slower and live longer, while the poor and servant class are fast burners, aging fast and dying young, after which maybe there will be protests and threats of revolt until the procedure becomes socially funded and available to all, if not just downright mandatory. Eventually, after some initial hesitancy, after just perhaps a generation and a half or so, perhaps 2 generations, the update will be so complete that the entire human genetic gene pool will have been adequately enough altered to where soon enough all new children, and even children entirely naturally conceived again, will be born with enough of the various alleles to be able to expect to live very long and healthy lives, and perhaps twice as long and with twice as many youthful and young years than we experience now. Or more. The possibility of the humans 2.0 genetic update will soon be upon us, and sooner than many of us think. There will be other collateral issues. If people start living twice as long, then even if generations only produce 1 child per adult, the world's population could be expected to slowly double, so there will perhaps become a time lasting as about as long as today's generational numbers of years or so, during which there will just be no old people, as the last of humans 1.0 die off, even while the first of the early human 2.0s are still early middle-aged to middle-aged. To avoid an overpopulation calamity, strict one-child policies and robust incentives to have only 1 child per couple, and that's 1/2 or 0.5 children per adult, will be necessary for about a generation or so, coinciding more or less with the update. Human 2.0, I'm all for it. And even though it is too late for me and all of us already conceived, like old flip phones, all of us are already just stuck with the old human 1.0 genetic coding, whether we like it or not. Am I crazy? I don't like this at all. I don't know if I fall under religious nut, but I'm just not really for it. I can't even provide a good reason why, actually. The overpopulation thing, I think, would be my main concern. Because, yeah, strict one-child policy, come on, brother, I'm Chinese, I know how that went. That is too much governmental control over people's bodies and reproduction habits, really. That is just no good, man. That seems like a slippery slope of authoritarianism. I don't think this would be manageable in any reasonable way. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it would have catastrophic consequences. Story 11. A cure for cancer. DC-Vax is a personalized vaccine that uses a patient's own dendritic cells and a sample of their own tumor to teach their immune system to recognize and attack tumor cells. Northwest Biotherapeutics, in coordination with the UCLA and King's College in the UK, concluded a Phase 3 trial showing remarkable improvements in treatment for glioblastoma multiforme, brain cancer. GBM has always been a death sentence, with most patients dying within a year of diagnosis. Subsequent Phase 3 trials of DC-Vax in combination with other agents have allowed patients to live for 10 or more. Since a DC-Vax is a personalized medicine utilizing the patient's own immune system, it's essentially free of side effects. Traditional chemotherapy is, in and of itself, poison. DC-Vax is now awaiting approval from the MHRA in the UK. Northwest Biotherapeutics has created a device, FlaskWorks, that can produce highly complex biological agents all contained within the unit. This drastically reduces the time, effort, space, and manpower traditionally required to produce these agents in a clean room. It is already being used to treat a multitude of cancers through compassionate use authorization that was awarded by MHRA in the UK. We are on the verge of being able to treat all solid tumors, 85% of all cancers, with no toxic side effects. What's more, if therapeutic effect is lost to tumor mutation, as happens with a lot of cancers, a new vaccine can be made from the mutated tumor to continue effective treatment. Story 12. Oh, buckle up, folks. We're on the verge of some sci-fi level stuff here. One breakthrough that's closer than your next Amazon delivery is the development of practical quantum computers. Now, I know, quantum computers sounds like something straight out of a Marvel movie, but these bad boys are the real deal. Imagine a computer that can solve complex problems in seconds that would take current supercomputers thousands of years. It's like upgrading from a tricycle to a warp-speed spaceship. Quantum computers use qubits instead of regular bits, and they can exist in multiple states at once, thanks Schrodinger's cat. This means they can process a mind-boggling amount of data simultaneously. Think of it as having a billion interns working on a project instead of just one. Why should you care? Well, this tech could revolutionize everything, from cryptography to drug discovery to solving climate change problems. Imagine finding a cure for diseases in days instead of decades, or cracking encryption codes like they're made of candy. Companies like Google and IBM are already making huge strides, and it's not as far off as you might think. We're talking potentially within the next decade or so. So while everyone's distracted by the latest TikTok dance craze, quantum computers are quietly getting ready to change the world. Story 13. Fusion energy. Well, we're both very far and closer than many realize, but I don't think the general public realizes how insanely huge of a deal it would be with fusion as opposed to fission. Most people just think nuclear energy is nuclear energy, and that it's all dangerous. Fusion would be such an insane advancement for humanity, and solve so many problems we have with our abusive relationship with energy consumption. No more reliance on CO2-emitting fuels, no possibility of a runaway effect like Chernobyl, no more radioactively decaying cancer-causing byproducts. I think another thing is battery tech. Battery tech in the last couple of decades has gone absolutely crazy due to mobile devices and cars, etc. It's advancing at an incredible rate. It's overlooked because it's somewhat incremental, but 10 years ago, phone batteries still kinda sucked. Now, my phone can charge from 0 to 100 in about 45 minutes with a high-amp USB-C. I was camping recently and forgot my portable battery bank I needed to use for my air mattress pump. Believe it or not, I was able to plug it into my phone USB, and just using my phone's power, I inflated the mattress in 3 minutes. I've also used my phone to boil a mini kettle of water while hiking for a cup of tea. Now, if you combine nuclear fusion tech with advancing battery tech as well as electric propulsion/motor tech, that's the holy trifecta, would change the world in such an incredible way. Story 14. MS has come so far. 15 years ago, people were prescribed anti-inflammatory tablets over the counter. Now we have disease-modifying drugs. I heard of a drug that slows the disease and repairs the damage. Imagine not being able to see out of one eye for a long time due to a scar on your optic nerve. You get this med, and you can see again. Brilliant stuff. Also, cystic fibrosis has come so far. Death sentence when brother-in-law was born, 1996. Then he had a chance to live till 40. He kind of gave up uni cause what's the point? Then NHS got access to a drug that was originally an insane price, like £500,000 a month. So now he has cystic fibrosis still, but doesn't take a million enzyme tablets or isn't getting crazy infections and needing breathing equipment, etc. He's living a normal life with us all, and he's grabbing it. Uni done. Career going great. Married to a great guy in a month. I'm so happy for him. He still has the disease, but hopefully it will be a case of he has it but no effects from it. Hopefully that can be done for most diseases. Autoimmune diseases are tough, but we're cracking them. But yeah, DMT's disease-modifying drugs are going really well, and it seems like every 5 years there's a new better one. This thread has felt so good to listen to. Everyone being so excited about advances in medicine in particular makes me really happy. It's genuinely frightening how much medicine has advanced. And a lot of the people listening to this, including myself, don't even really realize it. Like, all these advancements happened over our lifetime, but for us, they were just, normal things. The rate at which our world and medicine in particular has been improving is, I think, much, much faster than any other period of history. And we don't even really get the comparison. Some really exciting stuff in this thread, actually. Anyway, that's the last story for today. I would like to thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one. Also, guy who called me a robot for saying that every video, I saw you.